Will the aldermen please take their seats? Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2018-2019 Board of Aldermen budget deliberations. Today is April 9th, 2018, and today we are here for the departmental presentation portion of the aldermanic budget process. But before we begin, will everyone please join us as we salute our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Alderman Anderson.
Present.
Alderman Beatty.
Present.
Alderman Fortunati. Alderman Gaynor. Here. Alderman Gurman.
Here.
Alderman Genotasio. Here. Alderman Golden. Alderman Grant.
Here.
Alderman Hardiman.
Alderman Hardiman would like to be excused, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Smith.
Also, Mr. Alderman Smith would like to be excused.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Alderman Sutton.
Here.
Alderman Tranquilli. Here. Alderman Vaccarelli. Here. Alderman Vitro. Here. Alderman Vitale. Here. 13 present, Mr. Chairman.
We have 13 present. We do have a quorum.
Sorry, 12 present. 12, sorry. 12.
We have 12 present, and we still have a quorum. Thank you, Madam Secretary. At this point, the first department organization on our agenda is account number 4133, Probate Court, on page 26.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Judge Beverly Strike Kafalis, the judge of the Milford Orange Probate Court. I just want to highlight the only change in the budget request from last year's budget is an increase in what is called digital photography. That is, in essence, the scanning and the laser fiching of all court records, which are the permanent record of the court. It is a number that we have estimated based on actual historical expense and what we anticipate our need will be for this upcoming fiscal year. For the benefit of some of the newer members of the board to share with you, we are a combined court serving the Milford and Orange communities, and by state statute, our budget for these types of expenditures are paid by the municipalities on a per capita basis. So the total budget for these expenses is divided on a portion, 75% funded by the city of Milford and 25% funded by the town of Orange. Most of the expenses of the court are paid through the probate court system itself. I did share with you the most recent biennial report of the probate court system. As many of you may know, our state budget is in dire straits, and it is impacting the budget in the probate court system as well. But I think it's important that all of you understand that although this particular budget request is fairly nominal in terms of the budgets that you are looking at, it does play a vital role in the services to all of our communities. The next biennial report will be published in a couple of weeks. This is the last one that was published. But on page 16 and 17, just to call to your attention, out of the 54 probate courts that now exist in the state of Connecticut, in the fiscal year ending in 2015, the last reported year in this book, we had nearly 95,000 new cases. Milford is one of the top case loads in the state of Connecticut. And the services are not just decedent estates and trust estates that most people affiliate with the probate court system. We appoint conservators, we handle adoptions and terminations of parental rights. Our children's matters are those types of guardianships that family members seek to be appointed as guardian for children in their families to avoid DCF placement, which that element alone of our system saves the state of Connecticut's DCF budget millions of dollars a year. We also appoint guardians of minors' estates. I appoint adult guardians for individuals with intellectual disabilities once they attain the age of 18. And we handle psychiatric commitments of children and adults as well as a number of other smaller type matters like name changes, power of attorney accountings, and certain trust matters delineated in the report. But I think it's important for you to understand the importance of your probate courts in your system, and I thank you for your time, and I will entertain any questions you may have.
Anyone having any questions for the probate judge? Seeing none, you did such a great presentation. We don't have any questions for you.
Thank you. I respectfully ask you to approve my budget.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the good work you do. Next item on our budget deliberations is account number 4825, Bethel Center, page 92.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Aldermen, Mr. Mayor. My name is Tony Dolan, the Executive Director presently of the Bethel Center. With me tonight is our Board President, Ed Davies, our Board Secretary, Shay Landsberg, and our next Executive Director, Jen Paradis. Each of them is going to give you a little update on their own personal perspective on our budget request, and I'll be happy to answer any questions after that you might have. If you will just indulge me for a moment, I'd like to say that this is my last appearance before you, as I'll be retiring on June 1st, and I want to thank each and every one of you for welcoming me to Milford and giving me the support that was needed to move our agency from its previously precarious position to the healthy organization that it is today. I fully recognize that any success that I've had could not have been done alone. I have said that many times, that the generosity of this community is extraordinary, and I am very proud of what we have been able to accomplish together as partners. I know that you will provide the same warmth and support to Jen as you have to me, and that our agency will be in good hands. Ed?
I hope that's permissible. So, as the president of the board, I was a little shocked when Tony called me and advised me earlier this year that she was planning her retirement. I think we all knew that that day would come somewhere in the future. I didn't expect it to be in this year's immediate future. But I'll just let you know that the board of directors immediately, once we got over the shock of the news and got around wishing Tony the very best in everything that she does, we formed a search committee. We took it very seriously. We did a statewide search through several of the Connecticut nonprofit trade organizations and some other outlets where we knew we'd find people with the kind of experience that we needed to have to come in, and if not to fill Tony's shoes, to at least to sit in her chair and to move the operation of the Bethel Center forward for the near future. Our search committee reviewed over 30 applicants, narrowed it down to, I think, 3 final applicants that we conducted interviews. And I don't think any of us was really surprised when we unanimously agreed that Jen Paradis was going to be far and away the strongest candidate for this position and moving into the future. Jen came to us almost 3 years ago as the director of programs, and she has grown under Tony's tutelage into an extraordinary person serving this community and the clientele that Bethel serves. She has added a great deal of creativity and dedication to Bethel, and was very clearly passionate about not only wanting to keep the agency stable, but to move it forward into the future. So I just want to let you know that as much as we're going to miss having Tony, and what a great asset she's been to this community and what a great resource in this community, we believe that we're moving forward and really have the agency. We have a plan to move the agency into good hands and a dedicated board that'll continue to work diligently with Jen as she learns her new role.
Thank you so much for having us here tonight. We are very passionate about the mission of the Bethel Center, and there are a few points I'd like to share with all of you about our successes and how the center does operationally. Over 12 million households in America, which is 1 out of every 4 renter households, spend more than half of their income on rent or don't have a home at all. The situation can become a slippery slope into homelessness for many people who are currently spending that much on their rent. The annual point-in-time count conducted on January 24th, which is, if you're not familiar with what that is, each homeless person in the community is counted, showed there are 3,387 people experiencing homelessness in Connecticut, 392 families, 415 individuals, and 4,396 youth were either homeless or unstably housed. Connecticut has made great progress on the goal to end homelessness. We've all seen the newspaper articles that share that. At the Bethel Center, we continue to ensure that the provision of housing becomes an essential part of the state's goal to improve the outcomes of the most vulnerable. During the past year, working with the Coordinated Access Network and with our community partners, we've experienced some heartwarming success stories. The latest newsletter is in your packet, and that'll detail some of them. In November and December alone, 17 individuals were able to find permanent housing, transitioning from the shelter to permanent homes. That's incredible. Under the Coordinated Access Network, which is it goes through the 211 system, we're actually able to give priority to people from Milford who are next on the housing list into the Bethel Center. Keeps people from Milford in Milford. In a review of the recent statewide project performance and CAN-wide project performance analysis, the Bethel Center is above average in permanent housing exits at 41%. The average is 33%. And we're second in the region for average cost per household cost effectiveness at $3,087 per household, and the average is over $9,000. So it's less than a third. We're very, very efficient in the operations and very successful in the outcomes. In the packets, There's the most recently approved annual operating budget. For 2008, we did receive a 5% cut in the DEMIS contract last year, and that's the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. And we've been told to expect a cut from the Department of Housing contract for the 2019 fiscal year, which starts in July. The other resources that impact our ability to move our residents to stable housing has also been reduced or eliminated. We're fortunate that our revenue sources, are diversified, so we don't rely solely on the state or federal funds. We receive funding from the City of Milford, foundation and corporate support, local and civic clubs and organizations, the loyal churches, very generous individuals in the community who provide financial, in-kind, and volunteer services. But the challenge is how to continue to provide the high-quality, effective programming when the funding continues to be cut. So development and fundraising is the only other way to close the gap, and our board is committed to working diligently toward this goal. And I can speak for our entire board for that. Do you have anything else?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. It's very nice to be here, and thank you so much for seeing us this evening. I would like to just highlight how effective and efficient our services are in a time where we know that every dollar counts. Recently, one of the largest changes we made over the past year was to restructure our agency, our shelter programs, and in that way, without one single dollar added to our budget, made our systems more efficient and effective. We added a housing specialist position that works very closely with the Milford Chamber of Commerce, the Downtown Business Association, and other Milford networks to engage in landlords, realtors, social service agencies. Anybody that wants to do business with us, we want to do business with them, because ultimately we know that these folks that we serve every day, if they're better, then Milford's better. So I just wanted to highlight that part, and that we've been working diligently over the past couple of years, but made some real headway this year in being able to serve Milford folks as quickly as we can through our no-freeze shelter, and then in our 90-day program. This year, we've seen some really exciting numbers through our no-freeze shelter. It's open during the winter time when temperatures are below 32 degrees. We saw about 80, a little bit higher than 80 individuals unduplicated throughout the year, but we now know that 12 of those individuals have moved to our 90-day transitional program, which is very exciting because these are highly vulnerable folks. And many of them, about half of them now, and soon to be more, have been permanently housed. So that just speaks to the way in which we're really passionate about coordinating services and coordinating efforts. So I thank you for your time.
Okay. So, questions?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to let you know that the city owes you a debt of gratitude for all the great work that you have been doing for umpteen years. I've had the pleasure of serving food at your shelter and give you a first-hand experience as to what that portion of your commitment to the city is all about, and to the folks that live in Milford and beyond. But I just, I think your staff, you and your staff have done a fantastic job. And I will welcome you, Jen. You have a serious set of shoes to fill, but I have confidence in you that you will. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it.
Very
All the
welcome.
questions? It's-
I'm going to miss you at the coffee shop also.
I
Just
know.
want to
I'm
get a little
going to
side
miss
note.
you and the coffee shop.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tony, I would be remiss if I hadn't said something as far as the work you've done in the community and for Bethel, and we working together, whether it be United Way, Board of Aldermen, and all of those other little things. So we're going to miss you. but good luck in retirement, and I know you'll have fun with Ray. Not me, Ray. And Jen, congratulations. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else?
Any questions from any of the board members? Tony and their staff? Alderman Vecchiarelli.
I would just like to thank you all, and it makes me proud to be a citizen of Milford for all the work that you do into helping us provide the best services we can for our citizens and people that need help. So I'm proud to be a citizen here, and you help me be proud. Thank you.
Any questions from the board at this time? Seeing none, you did such a great job with your presentation. Need no questions. Thank you again.
Excellent, thank you.
Congratulations, Jen. Thank you again, Tony. The next department coming to us is Department number 4123, Community Development, page 20. The Harbor Commission could not make it tonight. They're now going to be scheduled for the April 24th.
Sorry about that. I was looking around for Ray and didn't realize I was up. Good evening. We have a status quo budget. I think the only change here is the $100 for new computer equipment. I think we're able to do quite a bit with our budget, and proud of the work I do and my staff does, and the relationships that we've made with various organizations, not only in Milford, but across the state, that helps us do our job better, but also puts Milford on a platform that makes us more successful. This past year, we recently got back our new numbers, and we had over 440 new business registrations in 2017, which is the largest number in over a decade, and a 9% increase from 2016. So we're doing pretty well. And it's a pleasure to do this job.
Thank you, Julie. Is there anyone having any questions for the community development? Helen, you have your hand raised? No. Okay, sorry. It's okay. Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Julie, thank you for all your hard work. Can you tell me what the vacancy rate is in Milford?
So the last time we had our rate done was 2 or 3 years ago, and it was at 96%, I believe. Let me just get this. Yes. And that number is cultivated through UI. We have over 9 million square feet of space, and they have this program called CoStar. Not a lot of us in municipalities are able to get it just because it's so cost prohibitive. So they will every once in a while throw us a bone and do this analysis for us. So they did this analysis, and then I called a couple of our realtors in town to say, this is the number, this is our square footage, you're out here every day, does this seem right to you? Yes. I did ask UI to do an updated number for us. I don't anticipate it being much different. Our biggest vacancy is about the 4% of office space, and that's just the general nature of everybody right now because people just aren't working in offices as they used to. But manufacturing is in a really good place. It's really just office that's tough, and trying to figure out how we repurpose that space.
Any more questions from the board for Julie? Seeing none, you can stay right there, Julie.
Oh, that's right.
The next one is Department number 4123, I'm sorry, 4155, Economic Development Commission.
This commission has only $1 in there, and we have not used it, so. We're running well as such with $1.
Anyone having any questions for the Community Development Department? Seeing none, thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you for the great work you do for the city.
Thank you.
The next department on our schedule would be Department number 4193, Public Library, page 35.
Good evening. I'm Chris Angeli. I'm the director of the Public Library. And I wanted to thank you for scheduling me for tonight, as this is the start of National Library Week. So it's very fitting. National Library Week, it's the time to celebrate the contributions of our nation's libraries and to promote library use and show your support. So hope I can see some support tonight. I ask you very respectfully. And why should you? I want to share some facts and figures from our service this past year. The Milford Library has 25,000 resident registered users. That's half of the population of Milford owns a library card and uses it. We had over 166,000 visits last year. That's about 65 to 70 per hour. We circulated 230,000 items. Again, that's about 93 per hour. And one that I'm very proud of is we had over 700 programs last year with 22,000 people in attendance. We're a very active, very popular building here in the community. For some of our services, we had 17,000 separate computer sessions. Those are sessions on our public PCs. In addition to that, we also have a very active populace that uses our Wi-Fi in the building. We've also had over 40,000 reference transactions. All of those rumors about libraries, being deceased, not being active, parts of the community, that's truly false. And I just want to let those figures sink in. We're open 49 and a half hours per week, 6 days a week, and we have 15 full-time staff members. We have a roster of part-time staff, seasonal temp staff, that average anywhere from 3 hours a week to 17. And I'm just mentioning that because that's where my biggest increase that I'm asking for is. It's in our seasonal temp budget. Our seasonal temp staff, they're essential to how we run the building. I'm very proud of the work that all of our staff, full-time and part-time, do, but we really couldn't do it without those seasonal temp employees. They man our public desks. They help check out those 230,000 items per year. They free up the full-time staff to offer all of these programs that we have in things like financial literacy, digital literacy, STEM skills, genealogy, health and wellness, book discussions, early literacy. Those 15 staff run an awful lot of programs. With an increase in seasonal temp staff, it will also free up our full-time staff to cultivate the wonderful collection of materials that we own, physical print books, movies, music CDs, art prints, nature backpacks, American Girl dolls, all types of things that we do circulate for the public. The other largest increase that I'm asking for is in our printing costs. As we are increasing our outreach to the community, it's extremely important that we get our word out on what it is that we do. I'd love to see that 25,000 registered users increase. So while we're asking for increases on both those line items, I've balanced them with cuts to both our book supply budget and our computer software budget. So I'm really asking for a very negligible increase of just 1.3%. Most of that is in contractual staff salaries. I think our budget's very conservative. We do a lot with very little, less than $30 per year per resident. So I hope that I can ask for your support in the budget that I presented tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Chris, can I ask you the information that you gave on your presentation? Mm-hmm. You have that you could send to us, to the aldermen?
I do. I actually have a bookmark as well that has most of those figures on it, and I can distribute those tonight. But I can send that to you.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
And those figures actually come from every year we have to provide an annual report to the state, so it's based on the prior year. So we're always a little bit behind.
because you gave us a lot of facts in a very
Yes.
short time, and it's kind of
I did. I have most of them written right here. I'll pass it out for you.
very good. Thank you so much. Anyone having any questions for Alderman Beatty?
Yes, thank you, through you. Thank you very much for all you do. I have one question about computers, and my colleagues who are more involved with the library and the liaison to the library already know the answers and know that you have it in hand to stagger computer purchases over a period of time and keep it updated. But tell me a little bit, are you satisfied with the ability, the resources of the computers for what you're doing now, and how is that need?
I am satisfied. We have 18 public PCs that we offer sessions on each and every day, 15 in the adult area, 3 in the children's area. And for the most part, we are able to manage patron need with those 18. You know, as more and more people come in with their own devices, their own laptops, mobile devices, and they do a lot of work on those using our Wi-Fi. So between the balance of the wired PCs and the Wi-Fi, I do think we manage. This past year, we did add in our children's department an iPad table, trying to help our younger patrons get some digital literacy skills, have parents get comfortable with using mobile devices and the apps with their children, and that has been extremely popular. So as we look forward to increasing anything, it will probably be in that arena.
Okay.
Wireless printing, mobile access.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderman Anderson.
Good evening, Chris. The fact that you and your staff offer 700-plus programs is incredible.
Yep.
You know, when I think back of where the public library was and where you are now, I think the community is really grateful that so much is offered of interest and people are taking advantage of it. Wondered if you could touch on the physical plant, because as part of your mission, you have repurposed space within the library. If you could touch on that, and what type of challenges still exist from a physical plant standpoint?
That's a good question. The library, the physical library, is over 39,000 square feet. It's on 2 separate floors, mostly the children's department on the bottom floor and the adult services on the top floor. It is challenging in its architecture. It's a very wide open floor plan with very little space for private collaborative work, small study groups, et cetera. So with the state grant that was awarded to us last year, we intend to add some small meeting spaces up into our main floor. And we also intend to expand our children's department. Currently, we have 50 to 60 people in a children's story hour twice a week, 2 days a week. And when those parents and children come out, the caregivers and children come out from story hour, there's not much space for them to remain with their children, mix, mingle, take advantage of our collections, make connections with other community members. So that is our other expansion that we plan to do. We are in the middle right now of a strategic planning process, and our physical plant is getting a lot of attention, both in its dated appearance, the lack of mobile furniture and mobility in how we reconfigure the space has been a very big issue. But we are trying to make the best of what we can. We have remodeled most of our stacks, made areas more accessible to different user groups, and I'm very proud of that, but it is definitely a challenge for us and something that is on our radar, both in our strategic plan and as we move forward.
Thanks very much for the update, Chris. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Thank you for the stats. Can you tell me the trends on the users? So 25,000, is it increasing, decreasing, about this flat in the last 3, 4, or 5 years?
For our library, our resident card holders are increasing. It is something that we had switched 2 years ago to a consortium membership And that really changed the way we looked at our statistics. Prior to that, as a standalone library, how we registered borrowers and how we counted them were different than how we do it now. Our registered Milford borrowers about 2 years ago was about 19,000, and we're now at 25. It's a huge trend for us. We're really making a push to getting a library card in the hand of every child. We're making a push to make it easier for library cards in the hands of our students, our middle school students and high school students. We now allow them to get a card by showing their student ID, which was something that wasn't the process before. So we're definitely having a drastic increase in resident registered borrowers.
While I still, you follow up? Go ahead.
One other question. Do you work with the Milford Literacy Center at all at the library?
The Literacy Center has a satellite desk in our building that they staff so that they can make the initial connections with their clients. Once that is done, many of their tutors use our space for tutoring space.
Terrific, thank you.
I just had a question, Chris, regarding the passport department. I know when it first came out, there was a lot of publicity about it, and now, I don't know why, but I just haven't heard a lot about it. I know your seasonal temp takes care of that. How is that doing?
The passport office is doing well. The passport office pays for itself. So all of the revenue that is generated from the passport office pays for that seasonal temp help. That's not included in this budget here. It also pays for its own supplies. So we do take that money and we pay for some of the extras that the city does not provide for us in our budget.
That's why we haven't seen it in the line items in your budget.
Correct.
That's why. Thank you.
Correct.
Alderman Vitale, thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Welcome. In your presentation, you had indicated the fact that you help with the STEM program in the city. And I don't know if you know, but I think you might, that STEM is going to STEAM.
It is going to STEAM, yes.
And you're going to be able to address that with no problem, I would assume.
Yes, I would hope so, especially if we can have some additional staff to help us with our programming.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Alderman Beatty.
Through you, thank you to Chris once again. You mentioned staff. Do you need additional staff with the anticipation that arts will be included in STEM? And that relates to what you said about having 50 children in the program. I attended a program in January with my grandson that was absolutely wonderful.
Oh, great.
The teacher, and that particular teacher was very gifted and very skillful, but I'm sure she was one of many. So I'm ambivalent. Pointing her out, I think she's emblematic of the programming from what I heard from people. But there were 50 children in the room. It was the younger group for under 3.
Right.
And there were boots and heavy coats for the snow, and they had command in a limited space, etc. But they were talking about the fact that some of those programs are fully enrolled and that there could be expansion. So now, to piggyback on what Alderman Vitale said, and you said, yes, you would need programming expansion. Can you talk a little bit about that and what staff you foresee in the strategic plan to cover that? Thank you.
Well, what I'm currently asking for are seasonal temp staff to help cover more of our desk functions to free up our trained staff so that we can add additional story time hours. Currently, many of my full-time staff have to be at a desk checking out materials, returning materials, and handing a lot more of the clerical duties, which is great because it's a nice way to get to know the people that come in and use the building. But if we could have more part-time staff to free up our trained staff to do those other programs, it would help us out quite a bit. I think it would help the residents of Milford out quite a bit.
Hi, Chris. Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And that was my question was also related to staffing. Being on a bi-level location there, and I know sometimes you're very limited in your staff, and it seems that most of your increase is related to contractual increase versus headcount. What about safety for staff as well as patrons?
Oh, that's definitely something that I am very much aware of. We take our scheduling of our staff very seriously and making sure that we have enough bodies in each department to provide a safe environment, not just for staff, but for the patrons that walk in the door. We currently train any of our seasonal temp staff that get hired are trained to work at any of our public service desks so that we can move them around in the case of illness or vacation, et cetera. So it is definitely something that's always, that we're always very cognizant of, and that we, when we do our scheduling, that we make sure that we can handle and make sure that we cover, you know, enough staff to cover the 39,000 square feet that the building has. But again, we are training. Every single person that gets hired now is trained at every single desk so that they can provide quality service at every single desk.
Any more questions for the Alderman Grant?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question was actually already just answered, but I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for everything that you do for Milford. The library is run so well, and the statistics that you shared at the beginning were amazing. I mean, it is something that if you don't normally go to the library or see it, everybody should. The programs they offer are plentiful, and they're always done very well. And I mean, I'm in that area very often, and I see people, how often they're at the library. It's a very vibrant hub for our city.
Thank you.
So,
thank you. Again,
thank you
I'm
very much.
very proud of the work that my staff does.
Any more questions for the library? Seeing none, thank you very much, Chris, and thank you for the great job you're doing for the city.
Thank you.
The next department we're going to hear this evening is the department number 4153, Park, Beach, and Recreation Commission, page 31.
Good evening. My name is Dan Worrell. I'm the chairman of the Park, Beach, and Recreation Commission. As you can see, I just have one line item. It's a secretarial fee, $50 a month times 12, $600. I also have Director Piscatelli next to me. He's Director of Recreation. So if you have any questions on the commission, I'll be happy to answer them.
Anyone have any questions for the Recreation Department? Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through one of you guys. You guys did a lot of work this past year with tennis courts and so on. Oh, I was going to say, what's in the works for the future?
Well, that's really the next item on the agenda for recreation. So
let me delay that.
I'll pass it over to Paul.
Yeah, let's pass this one first. We'll readdress that.
Any questions pertaining to the Park, Beach, and Recreation Commission? Alderman Anderson.
Just for the record, I used to watch your commission meetings on MGAT. Are you still recorded?
I haven't seen one in a long time. If you see any now, they're probably from 2 or 3 years ago.
I haven't seen any in quite some time.
They haven't been there in a while.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Anderson, I believe that due to MGAT's funding in the last few years, they've cut back on the number of meetings that they do. And unfortunately, our meeting was one of the ones that they decided to, I guess, cut from their programming schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions pertaining to the Park, Beach, and Recreation Commission? Seeing none, we'll close under that department, and we'll open under department number 4620, Recreation Department, page 82.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Aldermen. I'll be happy to entertain any questions in regards to our budget.
Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I guess good question to ask you relates to the splash pad and pickleball court that is under construction now. And you can touch on, Paul, touch on how your department will be impacted and provide some services relative to that particular space. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Anderson. First of all, our department and the community will be impacted in a positive manner because it's a recreation asset that the splash pad in particular that's long overdue in Milford. It's a great source of entertainment for children and adults and seniors, so it's fits in well with our fund for generations that we like to publicize, that we provide activities for all generations here in Milford. Operationally, it's going to have an impact, of course, with some supervision and some seasonal staff out there to supervise the splash pad and just the operation of it. Utility-wise, there's going to be an increased cost, as you know, for the water and electric service that will be out there, and that's something that between our department, the Public Works Department, and the Mayor's office, we will come up with a plan on how that will be financed. I'm sure you've all seen, figures, how accurate those figures are. It's yet to be seen. Those are probably top-end numbers that were, publicized. And, the first year, I'm sure, like any new project, it'll be a little bit of a learning curve, and there'll be efficiencies that we can adjust as we go forward. But overall, tremendous positive impact for the community.
Thank you for that, Paul. Yes, it will be a tremendous resource for the community and most welcome. And I guess we'll work out the particulars of oversight and the financial aspects as we go. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Paul. Can you just elaborate on splash pad activities?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Vitale. So a splash pad is it's not a pool, it is a zero depth water feature. So you do not need a lifeguard out there. A splash pad and has water features such as a spray fountain that comes up from the ground when the kid steps near it, motion activated. There are interactive features where you can spray water at your friends, your family, based on direction of a nozzle. There's a tipping bucket that would fill with water, and when it gets to a certain point, Momentum would take it and turn it over. So it's not a pool. It shouldn't be confused with a pool, but it's more of a playground has the element of water involved in it and interactive equipment, to foster interactions between those people that are out there.
Just to follow through, Mr. Chair. Water, it's very difficult to keep clean. Does it recycle? Does it build up mold on this pad? How is it cleaned? What's the maintenance?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Vitale. So there's two types of water parks, a recirculating water park, spray park, and a flow-through spray park. A recirculating park is one that operates similar to a pool. You have the water gets captured, it runs through a filter, it gets chlorinated, it goes back out through the system. Relatively expensive to operate it, the mechanics involved, the chemicals involved. It has to be treated like a pool. You should have a pool operator out there running the maintenance of it. The system that we've chosen is a flow-through design, which means the water comes in, it's used in that element, that feature, and then it will flow out of the park. So there's always fresh water coming into it. There is cleaning involved, like in any recreation facility, playground. Even the wood chips that we have you have to be turned over to eliminate the mold. So there will be some sort of cleaning necessary for it's poured on a concrete surface. So, power washing and other methods of cleaning if necessary.
Is there a membrane on top of it, or just chips, you said?
So I didn't want to confuse you. I was talking about the chips are used in the playground, and those, we have to maintain as well. So this would be a concrete surface. There's no membrane on the surface, so it's a poured, smooth concrete surface, similar to the skate park surface. It's not a rough concrete; it's a smooth concrete.
So you're going to have a lot of running around, kids going to be running around, so there's got to be a lot of supervision there to make sure this is not happening, slipping and falling and whatever. So I can see a lot of maintenance, and I can see a lot of supervision. My next question would be, what is the estimated gallons per hour or per day that are going to be used at this splash pad?
I do not have that figure with me. I can provide that for you.
Please.
But I just want the board to be aware that the water's not constantly flowing. If there's nobody out there, all the water features are activated on buttons or sensors. So you're not going to drive by there and see the bucket filling with water and emptying onto nobody.
Especially in today's temperatures, but when we get into maybe July or August, it's going to be more constant flow of activity there anyway, so.
Correct,
I
and
understand.
then we'll be able to set the time on and time off, so, it won't be, kids can't go out there at 8 in the morning and expect it to work. It'll be set on a timer to operate only between certain hours.
If you could send me those stats, if you have them, the water usage, I'd appreciate it. Paul.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Any more questions pertaining, Alderman Fortunati?
Thank you, through you. Are there any plans to make use of the water that's used, recycle it?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Fortunati. We do have a couple of ideas of what we're gonna do with that water. We'd like to repurpose it perhaps to help the community gardens down the road with their water. That's currently a system that's fed with a regular water line. So if there's anything we could do to supplement that water and offset the cost of providing water for them by using that runoff water, that's one of our options.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Alderman Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. I noticed that there was a $25,000 request increase in the seasonal temporary positions, that it looks like it was reduced to $10,000 increase from the mayor and finance department. Could you speak about what type of changes are happening that would require the increase and what may be lost if you don't get it?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Grant. Similar to the library, and we utilize seasonal temporary personnel to the tune of about 250 employees per summer for our summer programs. The number that I submitted or requested rather, was based on thought that the state of Connecticut was going to raise the minimum wage again on January 1 of 2018 and then again on January 1 of 2019. That has not happened. So the number that the mayor and the finance board recommended will be a sufficient number for us to operate going forward this summer. However, you hear rumblings of a $15 minimum wage now in some states and also in Connecticut. And just to put that in perspective, that's a $4.90 raise over the current minimum wage, or an increase of 48.51%. So if you were to project that onto my current seasonal temporary payroll, if that was to happen, I'd be coming in here asking for over $500,000 to operate as is. So that's just something to keep in the back of mind, that as the minimum wage increases, so does the cost that we have to operate. And we've been able to go pretty much 2 years, and then we increase, and then we stay steady for 2 years, and then we increase again, rather than going up incrementally each year. So the number looks bigger, but it's because it's been spaced out over a 2-year period.
All right, thank you. I'm glad to hear that no programs are going to be lost. Appreciate it.
Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Paul. So back to my original question. You guys done a lot of work in town, especially with the tennis courts, the ball fields. What's any major projects coming up on the horizon next year or two for planning purposes?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Gurman. So we have done a lot. We've been very fortunate, and we're very thankful to the board and to the finance board for your support of those projects and enhancing our recreation assets in town, which is very important to the livability of our community. The pickleball court and the splash pad and the enhancement to the dog park at Eisenhower Park are, just a further step in creating those great recreation areas for the community. Going forward, there's replacement of a lot of playgrounds in town that this board approved as part of some bond money that you're going to start seeing probably in a month or so. We have over 19 playgrounds located in various neighborhoods in town. A majority of them have equipment that is approaching 30 years old. Some of it's not very imaginative, doesn't present cognitive or physical challenges to children, which is what a playground's supposed to do. So one of the things you will be seeing will be those playgrounds being upgraded and or improved.
Alderman Beatty. Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions. One is the playground over near the ball field, Lou Gehrig Field on Meadowside Road. Just recently, we've had to take the slide down because it was cracked and was a very big safety hazard. Is that playground one of the playgrounds that's earmarked to be updated, and will that slide be replaced for this summer?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Vecchiarelli, that is the first site that will be upgraded. That was one of the 3 sites that was originally targeted for this program, and with the demise of the slide, we're going to move that one up to the first spot. So we're hopefully going to get some purchase orders together for that within the next couple of weeks, and you should see some activity out there prior to the heart of the baseball season, because that's a popular spot during the youth baseball time.
Thank you. One other question. On Walnut Beach, there was some work done to down there. It's, I guess, continual work being done down there. But I did notice that while we used to have several charcoal grills that were permanently stationed pretty close to the parking lot, I notice now that there is no grills at all there. And I was wondering if you could tell me, do you have plans to replace the ones that were removed?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Alderman Vecchiarelli, I'm not aware of there being any charcoal grills in the last 5 to 10 years at Walnut Beach. Per ordinance, charcoal fire is prohibited at Walnut Beach. So I don't know if those were ones that had been there left behind by patrons, or or where they were, because I'm not, if they were there, I was completely unaware of them. But
Well, I was rather knowledgeable in our open burning, and while we do allow for the cooking on our beaches, at Walnut Beach, we actually supplied them, and I was very surprised to see that they were removed, because we do allow for people to cook their hamburgers and hot dogs there, and we had provided the grills. They were cemented into the ground, and somebody must have taken them out, and not sure why, but I think the people enjoyed them, and so I'm very disappointed that they were removed, and I would like to see them put back over there. And so at this point, you have no plans to put them back, and you don't know who took the ones out, right?
correct, and I also have no recollection of them being there. So perhaps tomorrow you and I can have a conversation and maybe take a ride down there, and you can show me where they were, because again, if they were there, I have no recollection of them.
Yes, okay, maybe we'll have to talk to Public Works in addition, because, you know, I mean, you guys aren't the ones that would normally take those out anyway, so, but yeah, let's get together and we'll find out what happened and see what we can do.
Certainly.
Alderman Beatty?
Thank you, and sorry if to mention you mentioned the dog run, the dog park at Eisenhower Park. Thank you for your participation in that project. I am quite frankly surprised at the degree of interest and the number of comments that I get about the dog park. I underestimated the importance of that. It had looked seedy for a long time, just by virtue of deterioration over the years through weather. The mayor mentioned it in his annual remarks, and I had to play catch up about the need and the use of it. And I just want to express to you how significant it is to that area and how it brings people from other areas of the city to Eisenhower, and it's been a very good project for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Anderson, did you have your hand up?
No, I just wanted to offer that in relation to what Alderman Vecchiarelli had mentioned, there were grills along the perimeter of the parking area. That's where they were located. And there's even a pavilion along the perimeter of the parking lot on the easternmost section of the beach that had a grill. And they were permanently affixed. So just for edification purposes. Thank you.
Any more questions regarding the Recreation Department? Seeing none, thank you very much, Paul and Dan. The next item on the agenda is Department number 4121, the golf course, page 112.
Dick Austin couldn't make it tonight, so my name is Dan Worrell, Commissioner of the golf course, also the financial advisor. So if there's any questions about the budget, I'll be happy to answer them. The budget's basically the same as it has been year to year. We switched something with the accounts, taking some out of repair and maintenance and putting it towards the water account. If you have any questions on the budget or the golf course, I'll try to answer it for you.
I just have one question, Dan, regarding to, I don't know if you were here last meeting that we had concerning the HVAC installation, the reinstallation at the clubhouse. How did you make out with that? I know we gave you a ceiling, a cap.
It's done. It's up and running.
Would that wind up,
We didn't go over budget. It ran in the area of $30,000. However, we also have to put in the instant hot water devices for the sinks. So it should be right around there.
Okay, thank you.
But it was done very well.
So you replaced all the ductwork as well? Is that what
Yes.
brought the cost up? And all that ductwork is insulated ductwork versus before it never had to be
It is
insulated?
the correct ductwork that's supposed to be in there.
Okay. One air handler does that whole clubhouse?
Two.
Two?
And don't forget, it's also the boiler, too.
Okay.
So we had to because, as you may remember, we redid the back room, which is now available for rentals at the golf course. So we wanted to make sure that not only heating-wise, because you can use it in the fall and winter, but also air conditioning-wise. That was the original unit from 21 years ago.
Very good, thank you. Alderman Vaccarelli.
Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that there was talk, I don't know if it was official talk or not, but in the existing golf course ticket house, on the extreme left where the golf carts used to be stored and some equipment are now moved out into a new building that you guys had built. And there was maybe some discussion that at some point in time that area that where the carts were stored may be utilized for like serving food, hamburger, hot dog, something like that. Is that something that is still on the drawing board for the golf course?
Okay, what we did was the management company stored their equipment in the clubhouse, in the back room. We wanted to take that equipment out because obviously if you have a gas spill, et cetera, in there, it's not going to smell too good. So we took the maintenance equipment out, put it into the new maintenance building, okay, which freed up the back room, which we redid to rent out. The carts right now are in the sheds. They're still there. So right now, we don't have any plans to move any of that.
The sheds, they're separate from the building I'm talking about though, right?
Correct.
I'm talking about the building that is in the same house as the ticket sales.
Okay.
Where, you know, you'd walk through a separate door and there's that big area there.
Right, that's what we rent out, and if they have a golf tournament, they use it for food, they cater it, et cetera, so it gets used.
But there's no facilities there to cook or make food, right?
No, no.
And there's nothing in the works to be doing
No.
that in the future?
Not
Okay.
on the planning, on the drawing board yet.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. What are the revenues? On here you say the revenues are 84,000 for the golf course. Is that the total revenues, or is that?
All right, we get revenue, it's broken down in three different ways, okay? We get a percentage based on the number of rounds that are played, okay? We also get that goes into, by the way, open space. We also get a yearly payment, which is paid in quarterly installments from the management company, and we also get revenue from the rental of carts. That's where the income comes into the city.
Okay. And that total would be roughly?
$122,120. 42 cents.
All right, thank you. And
Now, keep in mind, that's also including open space. So it goes into the golf course open space also.
and next question, can you explain further on the room rental? I wasn't aware that room was,
Okay.
with the size of it and the cost.
Well, we redid the back room. We cleaned everything out. Groups, organizations, et cetera, can rent it out. I think they charge $150 for 3 hours. The golf course gets a 15% fee of that, which is standard with our recreational buildings and programs in the city of Milford. The organization, the golf course, et cetera, has to have insurance coverage on all the events there. So it's something that somebody can rent out and the city will get a percentage of what the cost is.
What's the square footage of that room?
Oh, boy. Well, let's see, it can hold, I think, about 80 people, so, I don't know, 20 by
Yeah, that's close enough.
40 or something like that. It can hold roughly 80 people, depending whether or not there's chairs and tables in there.
Any more questions for the golf course? Alderman Beccarelli.
Thank you. I know you started with some of the golf carts and, you know, trying to help people that have maybe walking disabilities and stuff. How many golf carts now do you have?
6.
Alderman Anderson.
Just wanted to know the rental fee for the room is?
I think it's $150 for 3 hours, and the management company handles that. Like I said, they have somebody there as the event's going on, so that's all on them. You know? Insurance, everything.
So you can make a reservation over the phone. Can you make a reservation online?
On the phone. You have to call them and tell them what date you want, what hours, et cetera.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, go.
Any more questions regarding the golf course department? Seeing none, thank you, Dan, for answering all our questions.
Thank you.
Paul, and thank you both for the great work you're doing for the city of Milford. The next department we're going to hear from this evening is Department Number 4142, Department of Permitting and Land Use. Mr. Griffith, welcome.
Good evening. I'm Joe Griffith, Director of Permitting and Land Use. I'd like to just kind of run through my brief presentation. I won't read all of it, but hit on some of what I believe are some of the highlights of what we've done in the past year and what we're looking forward to doing in the upcoming year. The 2018-19 budget is proposed at $1,066,252, which represents a approximately $5,000 increase over the budget for 2017-18, which was approved at $1,061,325. Of this total department increase, $10,695,000 is attributable to salary increases offset by reduction in capital outlays. Specifically, in this past year, we had purchased laptops and software, which are carried under this year's budget at $6,500, and it's not in this upcoming budget. As was initiated in 2016 and 17, and as was reflected in the current budget, We've continued to consolidate operational expenses budgeted under the DPLU expense line items. This has enabled us to effectively monitor operating expenses. And so in this current budget, what we've done is, with the exception of gas, postage, and advertising, we've consolidated all the operational expenses under DPLU. They're no longer separate line items under the building department, inland wetlands, planning and zoning. So specifically in the planning and zoning department and the zoning board of appeals, we continue to carry line items for postage and advertising, which advertising is specifically the cost of public notices in the papers. You should also note, as you know, that as of November 9th, 2017, this board passed a ordinance that requires the Planning and Zoning Board of Appeals to collect fees for those publishing in the newspapers. Also, as in prior years, 2018-2019 budget is requesting funding for replacements and upgrades to our technology, including replacing outdated and obsolete desktops and providing specific workstations with dual monitors. Again, we're trying to increase our use and operation with electronic documents, reducing the paper. It's not just a matter of our handling the paper. It's what we're trying to do is get the submissions of planning and zoning as well as building permit construction documents in an electronic format, which is just inevitably going to reduce the cost to our customers. Briefly, our staffing, two major changes that happened in the past year. One, my administrative assistant, Phyllis Leggett, retired. And for the past 3 quarters, Meg Green had been serving as both interim administrative assistant as well as the Zoning Board of Appeals and Planning and Zoning clerk, and also the secretary in the zoning. We've now hired a new administrative assistant. She seems to be adjusting well. Everybody seems to like her. She's been here for about 2 weeks now. Meg will continue to serve as the Planning and Zoning Board clerk. Also, very sadly, in December of 2017, you may recall last year we brought on a new hire, Rack Gleason. He passed away. It was sudden and hit us pretty hard. And so right now we are advertising and collecting resumes for a building inspector A position. So again, that's continued to be carried under this budget. Should also note finally that without going through the rest of this write-up, we are having and scheduled to have our community rating system community assistant visit. It's an audit. It's representatives from FEMA coming down and reviewing our procedures specifically to grade us at our community rating system. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the best, as we go from a 10 to a 9 to an 8, the residents of this city see a 5% decrease in their flood insurance premiums. That's through a FEMA program. Right now we're at a 9. We have our visitation from FEMA coming in June 28th of this year. Well, let's just say we're working to get our score down as low as we can. We've done a number of things, and the reason I bring it up is part of this building department. An important element of our community rating system as what's called our BCEGS. Please don't ask me what that stands for. It has something to do with grading our building inspectors. And specifically, it's based on staffing. So one of the scores that is contributing to our community rating system score, to lower it, is the score that that we maintain through our BCEGS score. Just to put it in perspective, in 2007, which just by luck of the draw, we were in sync. Connecticut had just adopted building codes that were current, and so our score at that point was a 5 and a 4. 5 for residential buildings, 4 for commercial buildings. In 2016, again, because of bad luck of the draw, if you will, Connecticut was out of sync in adopting the national codes, and so our score then was raised to, and again, the higher the score, the worse it is for us. We're looking to get a low score. 2016, our score was a 5 in residential buildings and a 10 in commercial buildings. We then essentially resubmitted because Connecticut had put in for adopted new codes, more current codes, and right now our score is back down to a 4 and a 4 for both residential and commercial, so it's the best score that we've received so far, as far as the history goes. And again, I bring that up because an important element of that BCEGS score is our staffing. You know, how many permits are we bringing in for a city of this size, the population, the square mile area, and they're looking to see that we're maintaining well-qualified building officials to conduct both the plan reviews and the inspections. I'll stop here. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I don't have any questions, Joe, but I just want to let you know firsthand, being a home improvement contractor and a general contractor, you have definitely increased my popularity for your staff. Before I was like hesitant about doing any work in Milford, I'll be honest with you. But you have really come a long way. The service down there is excellent. All your staff, from the clerks right to your inspectors, they're right on time. You get online now, you know just when you're going to get inspected, you know what time you're going to get inspected. Very, very helpful in the building trade. I want to thank you very much for that, for all of that, and what you do for the city.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Our staff is really excellent.
Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask you, on page 6 of our book in revenues, correct me if I'm wrong, our building department has brought in about $800,000 in fees. Inland wetlands, maybe $6,000, and planning and zoning, $30,000. Would I be correct in those figures, approximate?
I would say yes. Again, if they show up in these sheets, yes.
Okay, yeah, because I do like that $800,000 in fees for the building department. So it's a help.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, through you, what we presented to you last year and have implemented this year is essentially a minimum rate of cost of construction. The building code allows us to receive from any applicant a statement in terms of what the value of the proposed construction is, and we based our fees based on those estimated costs. Some of them are not realistic, and so what we've done is implement essentially a minimum cost of just for single-family residential construction. And so if an applicant comes in and is proposing $70 a square foot for a single-family home, we'll point to the schedule and say, we believe this is the correct number. It's a nationally published rate of construction cost for the Fairfield County, New Haven County areas. If the contractor insists that he's going to build it for $70 a square foot, we have him submit not only his estimated costs, but then at the end of construction, before we issue the CO, we will essentially audit his books and verify that he's in fact doing it for the 70, or as it turns out, oftentimes more than that, and then adjust his fee accordingly.
Any more? Alderman Anderson.
Like the chairman stated, the efficiencies within your office that you've been able to achieve with this particular staff, all the while the number of permits and the level of activity has increased exponentially, is really a tribute to your leadership, and grateful for that, as I'm sure residents are as well. One of the things that has helped our knowledge base is to receive the regular emails for demolition permits, and so thank you for making sure that that happens as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's see here. Line item number 47970000, junk car removal service. I do this every year in the hopes that maybe some year we can get something going. But there's a $0 figure there. It used to be, we had money in there. But the idea is that if we want to remove a junk car, we have nobody to remove it because the police department doesn't want to remove it because then it becomes a problem for them to ever get rid of it. You know, it's like they don't own it, and you know, it's a big problem. But everybody wants to get on the towing list. So, you know, the police department has a towing list with a whole bunch of people that tow. And it would seem to me that really we should put them in the rotation. So if one, you know, company gets rid of a junk car, the next one goes to the next guy on the list. So that, you know, eventually, you know, it would be fair. We could pick the names out of a hat as to who goes first and who goes last. But if they want to get on our list, for us to call them for these junk car, you know, I mean for towing and picking up cars and all that other stuff, which is a lot of money to be made, we should make some type of we should make something available to the taxpayer so that these tow people are responsible to get rid of these junk cars. So if we have one of your guys go out and say, we have a violation here, this junk car has to be removed by such and such a date, otherwise we'll remove it for you, and then they're gonna maybe have to pay storage fees and all that other stuff, but you know, it is a problem because we have no way to get rid of junk cars. And so, you know, your department, which is the enforcement part, and the police department, who makes the list for these tow companies, it seems like maybe, you know, when you have a little bit of time, you might be able to talk to the police chief and see, can we get anything going here? It just is for the taxpayers. I'm sure there's times where we want to get rid of a car and somebody's, you know, unsightly their property with the unsightly vehicle there, and we have no way to do it. So I'm not looking to do it tomorrow, but I've been trying to get it done for years, and maybe someday we can get something done like that, okay?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, I'll speak to Chief Mello and see if we can coordinate some efforts.
Any more questions regarding land use? Seeing none, we're going to move on to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Department number 4144, page 29. Any questions regarding the Zoning Board of Appeals? I see none, Joe. Thank you very much again for your great presentation and the work that you do for the city.
Thank you very much.
Next department we're going to be hearing from tonight is the department number 4116, Milford Government Access Television. Page 16.
Good evening. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Kara Flannery, and I am currently serving as the chair of the Milford Government Access Television Commission. Should I wait a minute? Okay. All right. As you all know, the primary goal of MGAT is to make local government accessible to the residents of Milford. MGAT provides our community with true, unbiased information, a record of what actually happens in meetings such as these, meetings that ultimately determine significant quality of life issues in our town. Last year, when I sat before this board, I told you there was a great need to update and upgrade the infrastructure of our operations, that Milford was years behind in technology and systems currently years behind in technology compared to systems in place in other towns. On behalf of our MGAT committee, I am very proud to report that we have accomplished a great deal in the last year. Thanks to your additional support and to grants from the Area 2 Cable Advisory Council, we've executed a complete overhaul of our control room at for the Education Channel. Our new system at Parsons includes HD cameras, graphics capabilities, a new file server for processing and programming content, and a much simpler workflow, which reduces our production time. At City Hall, we have installed new HD cameras, added audio enhancements, and graphics capabilities. The most exciting change at City Hall is the fact that we are now live streaming our meetings to our YouTube channel, our MGAT channel on YouTube, broadening our audience beyond cable subscribers. This past year, we've also divided production responsibilities between two MGAT operators, Arnie Rogoff, who's been with us for several years and currently manages the City Hall studio, and in August, we brought on Brooke Cirillo to cover meetings and programming for the Education Channel. We're also training Brooke and Arnie in both studios, which allows us to have a backup operator in either location if needed. We also continue to rely on the assistance of some very talented volunteers to cover our broadcast. Nick Destol, a student at Jonathan Law High School, and his mother, Andrea Destol, were very generous with their time in helping us to cover Board of Finance meetings through February and March. This year, the MGAT committee has requested a $3,000 increase over last year's budget, moving total city support to $22,250. We appreciate the support of Mayor Blake and the Board of Finance in approving this increase. This additional support gets us closer to our goal of being able to meet our operating costs with city funding alone. As I've explained before, each year MGAT also applies for grant funding from the Area 2 Cable Advisory Council, otherwise known as the CAC. This funding is not guaranteed, and the amounts awarded can vary greatly as these funds are divided among 4 communities: Fairfield, Woodbridge, Orange, and Milford. These CAC grants were originally intended to help communities purchase equipment for their government access TV stations. When I became chair of MGAT in 2016, I learned that due to a combination of limited funding from the city and Milford's encumbered workflow due to outdated technology, our CAC grant was being spent almost entirely on operating costs with no investments being made in equipment. Over the last few years, our committee has been working very hard to change this. Increased city support allows us to use more of our grant funds for what they were intended for, to purchase equipment and make necessary upgrades that both improve our viewer experience and help lower our costs of production. While we have accomplished much in the past year, there are still outstanding needs in equipment that we hope to address in our next grant application this year. When I sat before you last year, I remember being asked something along the lines of, what were my hopes for MGAT during the budget process? And I said that in the best possible world, MGAT would receive enough funding from the city to adequately meet our operating costs for broadcasting our meetings to our community. This has not been the case in Milford, but we are getting there. And I will remind you again that this is the level of funding. This level of funding is standard in other communities. Our neighboring town of Fairfield funded its government access station, Fair TV, with $57,000 this fiscal year. Woodbridge was at $24,000, and Orange Government Access Television is operating with a budget of $72,000. We are deeply grateful for your continued support, and thank you again for the opportunity to appear before you this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Alderman Fortunati.
Through you. You're doing a wonderful job. I'm really impressed with all the improvements. What did you get last year from the grant, and then what are you hoping for this year?
Right. So last year, our last grant cycle was $32,554. The previous year was, wait a minute, it was $32,000 in the last fiscal year. This fiscal year, in September, we were awarded $33,420. In 2016, when I became chair, the grant award was only $23,000. And that just goes to show you that our grantor is a lot more interested in funding communities that are willing to invest and pay for their own operating costs. I found them to be much more generous when the city was more generous. And that's, but we're still, we're really trying to cut back. I think this year has been the lowest we've dipped into our grant for operating costs. We spent about $6,000 on labor. The previous year, it was about $10,000. So by both providing oversight to our workflow, trying to really trim down how long it takes us to, how much time we're spending producing these meetings, but also investing in equipment that just makes it easier to do, we're really working at both of those angles.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other than the secretarial fees, who else gets paid on that committee?
Nobody on the committee gets paid. We only we only pay Arnie and Brooke. Those are the only two people.
Okay, thank you. There was a lot of.
I'm sorry?
There was a lot of confusion with that. So I just wanted to freshen that up.
Oh, sure.
Thank you very much. Any more questions, Alderman Vitale?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Kara.
Hi.
A couple of questions. What is the price of a telecast per hour or meeting? I don't know how you, what you do with it, and how many.
It's kind of a moving target. We have, and especially now because we are working with new technology and we're still in the training process, we feel like at Board of Ed, also keep in mind, what was your question, the cost per meeting?
Either an hour per hour or the meeting. How do you break it down? I can see a Board of Ed going on forever.
Yeah.
Meetings are going on forever. So is it an hourly rate or is it per?
Yes, we pay our operators an hourly rate for production.
So what is the hourly cost of a production?
You want me to tell you what I'm paying each person or what?
What is it in order to put this show on tonight? What is it costing us?
So I would say the City Hall productions are roughly, we're down to about 200, I believe, 200 per meeting.
For the meeting?
No, the meeting alone, we still have to do some file transfers and a little bit of editing.
So a total price for
from
the beginning to the end to production of a telecast?
I would say I'm hoping to get down to about 200 per meeting, correct?
200 per meeting. And how many, and I heard somebody tonight say that their program or their meeting was not telecast because whatever. How many do you do a year? How many productions?
So we have 6 meetings per month, but we have the 2 Board of Ed, 2 Board of Planning, so 6 meetings per month. I have to do some math for that, but we also do all of the Board of Finance budget hearings, and we also do all of these budget hearings. And then we try to fit in an occasional hearing that's of interest. So it varies per year.
Okay. So that's a total budget of $22,000. That covers all the productions that you do because it's labor intensive?
So we also have internet expenses, which are running us now about $900 a year. We will probably be purchasing a Photoshop license because we are generating graphics now. We're still going to need, it's not just labor costs, but there are some other costs in operations.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What boards do you do currently right now? Like, do you do the Board of Recreation? I guess maybe you did at one time, but maybe not now. But
so we're going to try to add more as we are able, but right now it is Board of Aldermen, Planning and Zoning, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Board of Ed, Board of Finance budget hearings during that whole season, and Board of Aldermen budget hearings during that whole season. And then we usually try to fit in 1 or 2 more events or hearings if we can. We recently had some requests to cover additional meetings, and we're going to try to see before the fiscal year if we can maybe fit in, you know, we've had requests for, like you said, parks, beach, and recreations, inland wetlands, and the sewer commission and the police commission have also been on our list. But this is really something the committee needs to review. We have a list of goals and priorities for the coming year, one of which is to review if we can fit in an extra meeting here and there, what would that be? We also need to update our bylaws now that we have completely new systems. We haven't updated our bylaws, our policies and procedures since 2009. So we'll be considering what we would want to add in, you know, should there be a surplus. That hasn't really been the case in the past.
Thank you, and I appreciate the hard work that you're doing in this department to, I think you're on the right track and it's grown in the right way.
Thank you.
It's truly amazing the value of what you do for our taxpayers, who many aren't able to come out to all these meetings, but can sit there, you know, in the comfort of their homes and watch. And not only that, but can go to the YouTube and zero in on what meeting and where in the meeting they want to watch it. So they don't have to sit through an entire episode to see something.
Yeah.
But it's moving along nicely, and I want to thank you.
I just wanted to add one more thing. In addition to the operating costs of recording the meeting, there are costs of programming the channel. So once we record the meeting, Arnie has to come in and spend time loading that meeting onto the Latronics and then putting the programming together, and that's additional time, and I did not factor that into that number that I quoted, and that's ongoing. That's every week. And plus uploading meetings to YouTube, we do that as well.
Alderman Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recently had the opportunity to be the liaison for the MGAT committee, and I've been able to see firsthand the amazing work that you've done, and the improvements that you've done over the past 2 years have been unbelievable. And they've already been mentioned, so I don't want to repeat it, but you are really close to being funded completely by the city for the operating costs.
Very close, yeah, to what we are now.
About how much additional would you require to have it be 100%?
So you mean, and part of my reluctance to put a number out there right now is because so much has changed in the last year, and we're still getting our bearings. We're actually still working through some kinks, but I feel like the fact that we did spend $6,000 on operating costs with our grant last year, gives you an idea that maybe an extra $6,000 would make us whole. But when I see Fairfield recording, Fairfield has $54,000. They're sending 12 meetings per month to the community, so they're covering everything. Woodbury, Orange at over $70,000 does not only all these additional meetings, but they also cover community events and parades and fairs and put reels together. So I feel like, when I say an extra $6,000, that's really to just do what we've been doing. But I feel like we could do so much more. We could be so much more for the community. Also, I will mention we would love to. One of the things we're going to try to fit in this year is working with the Milford schools and arranging some kind of an internship or partnership with the video production classes there. We feel like we've seen a lot of people that we actually work with. The company we work with, DNR Labs, which actually did all this work. All the people that are working in that company got their start in video production as high schoolers working in government access. So the owner of that company created a career, created a business based on what he learned as a high school student working in government access. So I feel like when I say what we could do, we really do have a pretty big vision for this in terms of not only the content that we can create for the community, but what we can offer some of our students in Milford.
Thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate everything you're doing,
Thank
and
you.
I'm really glad to hear that there's a very large picture planned.
Yeah, yeah. We are, you know, all of these upgrades was a huge hurdle for us, and now we're really starting to fine-tune our vision, and it really revolves around three things: standardizing and improving operations, creating training manuals, ops manuals, so that we could bring in interns, we could educate people to work in some of these roles. Also, content and programming development. What content do we want to produce ourselves? What content can we invite from the community? Creating specs that perhaps if somebody wants to create their own PSA and send it to us, we could air that. And then the other priority is to increase viewership. How can we get the word out that this is a resource for the community? So our vision does, for the next year, really revolves around those three things.
Thank you, Kara,
Thank you.
for your presentation and all the work that you do for the city. Our next department will be Department number 4146, the Flood and Erosion Board. Is anybody here? Anybody have any questions regarding the Flood and Erosion Board? I guess Mr. Mayor will answer any questions regarding that. I don't see any questions, Mr. Mayor. We'll move on to the next department, which will be Department 4147, Tree Commission. Do you have anybody from the Tree Commission here? Alderman Gurman, you have any questions? I'm sure the mayor could answer it for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor. Is there still a tree commission?
Mr. Chairman, the tree commission is alive and well. I'm happy to answer questions about the commission. One of the projects that our Public Works, our tree commission, Milford Trees, are doing together this year is a tree planting project. We are looking to plant 200 trees across Milford this year in strategic places, making sure that we have the right tree for the right place. And we are teaming up with the Tree Commission in that endeavor. We already have a couple of different grant offers for those trees, including the Devon Rotary and other groups too. So it's going to be a successful endeavor.
Just one follow-up, Mr. Chairman. Is that to offset all the trees that they're cutting down, or is that? And are the trees, are the older trees still being inspected? I know they were supposed to go through a clearing phase before they chopped them down, but I haven't seen any of that.
So over the course of the last 2 years, UI has had a very aggressive vegetative management, and it's a double-edged sword because in Milford, we love to have our beautiful tree-lined streets. It's part of that New England charm that we cherish. At the same time, we want to make sure that our power grid is safe and protected, and there's less likely a chance that it's going to go down in some of these big storms that we've had. You have seen some of the results, both in a negative way and a positive way. One, we have had a lot of vegetative management. Our power grid has been more secure over the last couple of big windstorms, whereas other communities that UI has not gone through or Eversource has not gone through, they have not made out so well. We are trying to balance that. Milford has always had a program where if the Public Works Department takes down a tree in front of your property, a person's property, usually on the public right-of-way where the snow shelf is, that we work with the property owner, the adjacent property owner, and we offer to reinstall a new tree, a new right tree, right place. We always have the proviso that that tree has to be reinstalled away from the public right-of-way and away from the sidewalk, but it's a program that we've always had. We've extended that offer for folks that have had UI trees cut down in front of their property. We haven't had a lot of people take us up on that offer, but it has been extended. One thing to know about the UI program is It is a permissive program, meaning that in order for UI to take down a tree adjacent to a person's property, they have to have the blessing or the permission of that adjacent property owner. They actually have to have informed consent for that property owner unless they go to the appeal process, which I don't think has happened in Milford. There have been a lot of trees, but it has been in conjunction with the permission that adjacent property owners have given. That being said, we have tried to advocate with UI to trim more and chop down less. We're trying to get them, if there is an opportunity for UI to prune the tree appropriately, instead of cutting down the entire tree, we've asked them to do that. It's a constant struggle because there are a lot of different issues associated with our electric grid and a lot of different issues associated with, you know, the teams and the crews that they employ, but we've been trying to do our best.
One more follow-up, sorry, Mr. Chairman. Is there any kind of stump removal program after all the trees are chopped down?
PURA, the Public Utility Regulatory Authority, the state agency, they oversee the work, the vegetative management that both UI does and that Eversource does. As part of the legislation that provides oversight to PURA, the utility companies do not have to take down, they do not have to grind the stumps unless there's an issue with public safety. We've been trying to push back and have them modify that legislation. We're working with, I've attended a couple of meetings at UI with the public utility regulators in order to accomplish that or to have a lesser standard. At this point, though, our Public Works Department, we have a relatively new stump grinder. We have crews, but we are just ticking along because there are a lot more stumps right now than we have the capacity to grind. So some of those stumps are the responsibility of, you know, the property owners for which the trees were removed. Some of them that are in the city right away or directly on city property, we are working. Milford is better positioned than a lot of other towns. You know, if you look at all of the different towns in Connecticut, each one is going through the same issue, so there's a lot of community angst throughout the 169 towns, especially the ones where, you know, UI or Eversource have been pretty aggressive.
Thank you.
Alderman Beatty.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I guess my remarks are directed at the issue that any particular person. The tree commission representatives are not here, apparently with good reason. I think with them this discussion needs to be postponed because one of my concerns is that the tree commission might play a more active role in the aggressive vegetation management of UI and monitoring that. I may be misconstruing the purpose of the tree commission, but the tree warden does sit as an ad hoc member of that committee. So I think they need to hear it. Theoretically, we have a tree planting program. Theoretically, UI gets permission. They say they get 90% permission or 96% permission from the homeowner to do the vegetation management. But we don't have access to the script. We don't know what the script is. And I think that UI has more data than we have access to. We could make data-driven decisions that this particular area has to be aggressively managed because in 2010 and 2008, 2006, the power went out. Or the power hasn't gone out in that area in 12 years, since before Sandy and before Irene, and those trees lasted, and maybe it would take a more cautious approach. They must have tonnage. How many tons of wood do they actually remove? And I know that I spoke with Alderman Gurman, and we said that we would spearhead tree stump removal program. If Pura doesn't have the teeth to regulate that, we might think of a revenue stream like the Open Space Committee to have stump removal that goes along with the permission granted. So that when the permission is granted for removal of the tree, even if it's very legitimate and desired, that there is a plan for tree replacement. And the people who are responsible for carrying that through to fruition, rather than a general we, would do it. And that would be for tree stump removal, tree replanting. And there are people in the community who do not serve on the tree commission who have volunteered through me to be on a committee that would identify ornamental trees that would not be outside of the parameters that Public Works judiciously says. It shouldn't be on the snow shelf. It should not be interfere with trash collection. It should not interfere with any of public safety issues, and the police also has a say in that. But we could do that, but I do not see that. I would not have brought it up here for general discussion. It would always be privy to the mayor beforehand, but it was brought up as a general discussion without the tree commission, and this has been an ongoing concern of mine as a representative of the 1st District. So we're willing and able and would like to see it see us do better with this particular area.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the mayor. Question was kind of brought up, is there still a tree commission? Is there still Milford trees, et cetera, et cetera? Beside all the tree hacking and whatever that is going on, there were plantings that were commemorative, that you paid X amount of dollars for a tree, and it goes up, and you understand what
Yeah, the Milford Trees has a memorial tree program.
Okay. So my question is the logistics of that particular program. It just seems very difficult, and I'm coming to you at this point because other than the more important discussion, the less or the more mundane discussion was that 11 years ago, when I retired from Harborside Middle School, there was a commemorative tree planted on the green for me in my memory, my name, I hope my name. But it was never labeled. And this is 10 years ago, and I was wondering, I know it takes time to do things, but I guess the tree commission or the trees, Milford Trees, isn't really moving on this, and it has not been completed. And it was paid for by the committee at that particular point in time, so I don't know what's going to happen at that point. So maybe you can help me.
I can look into it. Milford Trees is a nonprofit, private organization that has been working with our tree commission. I know they just had their quarterly meeting, I think a few weeks ago, but I'm happy to touch base with some of the folks that are still very involved with Milford Trees and find out about the plaque.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any more questions regarding the tree commission? Thank you for your remarks and your information, Mr. Mayor. We'll close under tree commission and we'll open under apartment number 4156, Conservation Commission. Mr. Johnson, welcome.
Thank you.
Page 32, fellow alderman.
So good evening. I'm here to represent the Conservation Commission, which I'm a liaison to. As you see, our budget is steady, primarily focused on the dollars to support continuing education for the Conservation Commissioners. I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you might have.
Anyone have any questions regarding the Conservation Commission? Seeing none, we'll open under the next department, which would be number 4162, Open Space, page 34, also, Mr. Steve Johnson.
Yes, good evening. I'd just like to briefly just touch on some of the various aspects that I have the honor of being involved with in this position. It is one that really touches the community in a number of different ways, including a number of different volunteer organizations with our youth, with scouting, both Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, and Brownies. So from the very young to some of the older people that we have in our community all have a chance to really participate in a number of volunteer projects that we handle throughout the year, that I also kind of act as a resource or liaison to, such as this coming Friday. We have a company in Milford that's going to be coordinating a cleanup of Gulf Pond, and I just wanted to make sure that we had the right resources lined up, and including permissions, like so we don't interfere with the nesting ospreys out on a platform out there, so in our effort to clean up the plastics. But more importantly, I've had the opportunity of also doing a number of presentations at the Milford Library, and also articles on wildlife in Milford Living magazine and such. And those are also well attended by a wide range of people. And lastly, the Board of Education. I've been able to partner with some of our schools on both the middle school, East Shore Middle School, and advanced, actually it's an experiential science project that was done this year with 3 classes in the middle school at East Shore Middle School, as well as 2 classes at the Jonathan Law High School Advanced Placement ECE Yukon science program. So it's a wide range of different opportunities to connect with our natural resources across the community, and certainly would be happy to answer any questions that any of you might have.
Alderman Vecchiarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Steve.
Yeah, good evening.
You know, when I look at the open space budget, it's like, well, it's just you. It doesn't make many provisions for anything.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of depend on you to execute and do whatever it is that, you know, we need done, but doesn't give you any resources to accomplish any of this. So I guess, you know, your pay is to do as best a job as you can with whatever you can. But in our talks over the last few years, I've had a continual problem whereby constituents call me up and they are complaining that access points for our parks, our beaches, our open spaces, they're either not marked or many of them are hidden. Mm-hmm. We've had instances where there's an access point for a beach and the homeowners have very covertly covered them up. Mm-hmm. And made them either put gates up, and so to make it so that people no longer know that they can go through that area there to access the beach. Mm-hmm. So it became an important subject to basically identify where these access points are for all these different, you know, our open space, our beaches, our parks, and then after we've identified them, maybe finding ways to have them readily available to the public so that they can see a sign or a painting or something says this is, you know, City of Milford access point. Mm-hmm. And then realizing that this is a pretty big effort to, if you don't already know where many of them are. Many of them we already know, but there are some that we know about that the people give us a problem about, mm-hmm. which then brings in the city attorney's office to be able to investigate these deeds and say, okay, this is clearly an access point for City of Milford and blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'm asking you right now is, have you been able to identify these access points and maybe present something to the city attorney yet so that he would be able to further, you know, investigate how far have you gotten?
Yes. So thank you for the question. Yes, I've done quite a bit of research, but that research is not, I'm not a title searcher and not legal. So in terms of the baseline information, it's, have documentation on roughly 600 parcels in the city, over 3,000 acres. Of those, we've got about 263 parcels that are deed restricted, about 1,400 acres. In particular, we handle, or at least I try to handle, concerns, issues that are raised regarding our open spaces on a case-by-case basis, work with the mayor's office, the city attorney's office. On some of these I know in the past, it becomes then, does the city attorney have the time and the resources to do the appropriate title searches and such to document the history of that? So I'd be happy to relook at that and check with the mayor and the city attorneys on any particular parcels that you've got a concern about for your constituents.
Okay, because, I'm looking at your budget here. There's no money in it to just enough to pay you. Mm-hmm. But I guess what I'm looking at is, I actively help participate in buying open space. Mm-hmm. Because they don't make it anymore.
Correct.
And so with the city, we try to earmark monies to, in many different ways to mm-hmm. buy open space. And a lot of the open space and even some of the access points, and I've lived here my whole life, I have no idea where they are. Mm-hmm. And if I don't know where they are, then, I can appreciate when a constituent calls me up and says, I think this guy covered it up, or how do I get into there? So ultimately, I'd like to see where we have something on our website mm-hmm. that would clearly, reference these areas and also indicate their access points. Mm-hmm. I know that the mayor seems to be favorable to this too. So whatever information you have gotten, mm-hmm. if maybe you could email it to me, or we can, I can get a chance to look it over and talk with the city attorney, see where they're going with it.
Yeah, I'd welcome the chance to really, focus on some of the initial key properties, that are concerned, and then work from there, because there are, when we talk about, the number of different open spaces that exist and the different deeded access points to these properties, I always try to work in those situations with the adjacent property owners, let them know about that, and through our city attorneys and the mayor's office, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. So.
Okay, so yeah. All I really need is access points. Okay. Because I'm pretty familiar with the properties and stuff, but the mm-hmm. access points is, just even going down East Broadway and Broadway, mm-hmm. The access points that are open to the public, mm-hmm. we've we're getting away from being able to identify them. But thank you.
Okay.
Alderman Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Through you to Steve, thank you. You're held in very high regard in this community. You must know this. You're a gentleman and a scholar, and I mean that sincerely. You have the knowledge base and the experience. I know the mayor holds you in high regard. My understanding about the open space position is that there was we grew into that as a city, that there was some opposition to that didn't require a full-time employee, which sounds like a pittance to me now, 66,000 just for open space, nothing to fund a strategic plan or ongoing initiatives or pamphlets or printing. The pamphlet that you did of the open space and the accesses, that little pamphlet is wonderful, taking a walk in Milford, whatever. Mm-hmm. Now, secondly, so that position I am in favor of that it requires a full-time employee and somebody of your caliber. Now, the question, and I'll say it directly, I'm saying challenging things tonight, is your position in another temporary administrative post, does that interfere? Can those two positions be enacted in the full capacity, which I think everybody is grabbing at what you bring to the table? Can that be done? And is it being compromised? And should we make sure that that's filled in a different way? What would be your recommendations, honestly? What's being short-sheeted, if anything, with open space right now, if we don't have somebody who's full-time attention to that?
Well, thank you for the question. I think, when the opportunity arose last year and was asked to assist with Public Works and Public Works Director Chris Saley, the reason that I believe that came up and that I ultimately also accepted the chance to do this was there was already an existing relationship and an existing kind of overlap of duties. And it was really an opportunity to have conservation, open space, in a proactive conservation level and at the table under a number of different projects.
I'm sure, yes. Yeah.
So it has been certainly extra effort. I would say I've been trying to find and strike a balance to maintain that ability to connect with the people on a meaningful level and a volunteer in these projects. And I think I've been able to sustain that, but probably, certainly some of the weekend and evening activities that I was doing last year, I'm probably a little bit more limited just in terms of the amount of effort that's been going on during the rest of the week in terms of these other projects. But it's still something I really enjoy, so it's something I'm passionate about and something that kind of re-energizes me as a person, and so I try to make time to be able to do that on a fairly regular basis. If it's just not, it's also with other conservation communities as well, like the Milford Land Conservation Trust as well. So,
just to add to that, the cross-fertilization that you talk about with your input in the prism, that you look through things, has enhanced Public Works, but I must say they've been very eager and very smart to realize how that is necessary and beneficial too. So it's enlightened on their end to seek your input. That's not in question. I was just worrying about time.
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. Steve, good evening.
Good evening.
I know that you work hard and you've done a fantastic job, but I'm confused about something.
Okay.
The confusion lies within the idea of the open space. Is that a full-time? That's a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
An assistant director of Public Works is a full-time job.
Yes.
So I'm confused. You have one full-time job, two full-time jobs doing it yourself. Help me understand the salary and how that, you're not making $66,000 at this job and $93,000 at the other job.
No,
so and it almost appears to be that perception is reality here.
No.
So can you tell us, elaborate on how those jobs mesh and what is your salary?
Mr. Chairman, it may be helpful if I intervene here as well, because I was the one who worked with our Public Works Director to request the expertise of Mr. Johnson last summer. There was a need for additional help, specifically with the CDBG-DR projects, those grants. We have 9 grants, several $1 million worth of grants that the Assistant Public Works Director, when he left last summer, he was the primary contact on in order to fill that void during a period where we had a hiring freeze. From January 2017 to approximately November 2017, the City of Milford had several different spending controls in place because of the uncertainty with the state budget, the fact that we could lose potentially all of the state monies that we have received in the past. And so we put a hiring freeze on, which meant that we did not hire for really any positions across the city for a 10-month period of time, including the Assistant Public Works Director. During that period, all of those activities, duties, and responsibilities that the Assistant Public Works Director engaged in needed to be accounted for. Steve stepped up to the plate. We made the request, and he rose to the challenge. It is a stipended position. We give him the difference between his position and what a Assistant Public Works Director would make on a weekly basis. And when I say that Steve works probably 100 hours a week, that's not an exaggeration. I think probably the Labor Department would take issue with that, but He does a tremendous job keeping up with the 9 different projects that we have for CDBG-DR, as well as a host of other public works activities, as well as his responsibilities as our open space and natural resource coordinator. So he does yeoman service for this community.
Having said that, so somewhere there must be a savings. If there's a salary, regular wages of $66,000 in open space, and there's a 91+ thousand in public works, then open space doesn't need that much money, or public works doesn't need that much money in the budget. So I still am confused.
So again, the spending controls and the hiring freeze just recently ended. A few months ago, our HR department is scrambling to fill several different positions that are open at this point because we had such an extended period of time where we were not hiring. It is anticipated that as we move forward for the next fiscal year, the budget that you're reviewing right now, that we will fill that open position. There is for this fiscal year additional money in the Public Works office account where the Assistant Public Works Director salary resides. So there is additional money that we have used, a small portion of it for a stipend, but we have a large portion of it that still remains in that account that will return to the general fund at the end of the fiscal year when it's unused.
But the fact is that Mr. Johnson was appointed an Assistant Public Works Director this year, prior to this budget coming out.
He's filling the role of an acting Assistant Public Works Director. Correct. Yes.
Okay. So open space has a $66,000 line item for wages. Public Works has a line item for $91,000 for the assistant. So therefore, what is Mr. Johnson making as a salary for the one position, the 2 positions? And it can't be $150,000. So there's got to be an overage in one of those accounts. So why are we not recognizing that in the budget?
This is next year's budget. We intend to have both positions filled for the next fiscal year. There is a balance of unused money in the Public Works office account. That money will be returned to the general fund at the end of this present fiscal year. This budget that we're reviewing right now is for the next fiscal year starting July 1st, where we do intend to fill both positions.
I understand that. So Mr. Johnson's salary right now is $91,000?
Yes, I think approximately that. He's getting paid out of the open space account, and then he's getting a stipend for the difference between what he makes as the open space manager and the Assistant Public Works Director.
So next year we'll be filling the open space that'll be taken from his responsibilities, the open space, or will it be taken from the Assistant Public Works Director? What will Mr. Johnson be next year?
Well, we don't know. We have not posted the position for Assistant Public Works Director yet because we're trying to backfill some other positions. I don't know if that's a discussion that I'd have to have with Mr. Johnson to see if he was even interested in the Assistant Public Works Director on a full-time basis or whether it is something that another person will fill. So we have not had that discussion yet into the future for next year.
So that holds true that Mr. Johnson wants the Public Works Director, then we're going to be hiring an open space individual for $66,000.
Both positions are scheduled to be filled for the next fiscal year. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Beatty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I'd like to clarify the discussion. I brought it up. My viewpoint was about conservation. So I think even if those questions from Alderman Vitale are legitimate, it derails the discussion into finances. That was not my concern. I don't have any concern about double dipping. I think it's pretty typical for organizations when they have somebody take on extra duties, which often happens, that a stipend is given, and somehow it's always uneven. The question is, how much can the person do the two? Can they both be done? And usually if you value the person, you get their input. So in my private concerns, I wanted to make sure that human resources in Milford was budgeted enough and had the resources, personnel, so that the public works vacancies could be filled fast enough. And that there wasn't any hold up because we don't have the capacity. So that's how I feel about public works getting what they need for the administration position. So just to clarify, but I come back with the conservation question and the desire to somehow make sure that we advocate to have a full-time open space person that is budgeted in a way beyond just salary, or you wouldn't have a paperclip to take a walk to see the open space or go out, and that the that public works is also budgeted fairly, but not to mix those, even if they are legitimate concerns. And I think some of those concerns are better taking place as personnel issues in private. It wouldn't be the best forum to bring it up at an aldermanic meeting, and yet the conservation question came up because of the tree commission's absence and what I see as the pressing needs for that conservation issue in the first district. So thank you. I hope that it makes those two discussions, if they're valuable, parallel, and we get clarity on both.
Any more questions regarding the open space department? Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to Steve. Steve, I know you've done a lot of work with the open space and parks and recognizing all those parcels, and I believe you've recognized those in a map within MIS, the majority?
Working on the map. I've got the map. It's just a question whether you can get it in a digital form or not. Yes.
Because I've seen it printed before, and I didn't know where it stood, if it's 90% complete or 100% or
The
close.
version that you may have seen printed is probably from the 2012 Plan of Conservation and Development, which is not an accurate reflection of the open space parcels that we have.
It'd be nice once that's completed, or if it's near completed, to have it posted somewhere, maybe at the library, or so people are aware of all the,
Absolutely.
nice assets we have in town.
Yeah, no,
So-
absolutely. And I've been working, that's been a project that's involves a number of different departments, including the assessor's department, which actually is really the starting point, and then planning, the planning and zoning department, certainly the mayor's office and the city attorney's office, to make sure that what this map would depict is actually accurate. So,
thank you.
Yep.
Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve, I thought it might be of interest to board members to know what the nature of those projects are. There are 9 projects that are pending, funded by CDBG-DR, many of which have deadlines in the fall. So we're coming up against very quick deadlines. They're planning grants. That's one area that I thought you might detail. The other is, there's been a lot of talk on in social media about the presence in Milford of the eastern coyote. You had a very successful session recently at the library on that. I wondered if you can just provide briefly some information about the coyote. That's of interest to a lot of residents.
Okay, thank you, Alderman Anderson. So the first portion of the question about this, a brief overview of the CDBG planning grants. Those are disaster recovery grants provided after Superstorm Sandy. And the city has 4 planning grants, resiliency grants, and we have 5 infrastructure grants. The planning grants, the timeline that Alderman Anderson was referring to, is going to be completed, those projects, by September of 2018. We have 2 of the infrastructure plans for elevation of Beachland Avenue in the Captain Meadow area, and the Milford Point Road targeted for elevation and completion by December of 2018 of what we're working to accomplish this year. And then we have 3 additional infrastructure projects being in the Bayview area for flooding control, Morningside revetment, and the Gulf Beach. It's referred to as a breakwater, but it's actually technically a groin project that we're working on that to be completed by September 2019. A lot of moving parts and moving forward through the permitting portions of this with the state and Army Corps. And certainly I'd be happy to answer any other questions, following the meeting anybody might have. On the second portion of the questions regarding the Eastern Coyote, yes, very well attended. There is and continues to be a lot of interest and concern about the Eastern Coyote in Milford, and yes, we have a lot of coyotes throughout town. It's just not in one particular area, and they're really a part of our urban wildlife. And I think the lesson and the takeaway in working with DEP and the Connecticut Master Wildlife Program that I was a part of is we want to try to keep the wildlife wild. We don't want to do inadvertent things that are creating dependencies on that wildlife by indirectly feeding them, attracting them to our homes. They're by nature will want to stay away from people. That's not their nature to be attracted to people in their homes. So if there are incidents where coyotes are becoming much more comfortable about being around people, or any concerns about pets, etc., certainly our animal control officers, that department will certainly be helpful. Our police department is always helpful in responding in DEP in terms of managing any problem wildlife. I think we've been fortunate for the most part throughout the city, but if there are any concerns that people have throughout the community, we have avenues to track that information and alert the right authorities on how to best manage that in terms of dealing with those animals in their area. So.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If there's no more other questions for the Open Space Department, we're going to move on. Thank you very much, Mr. Johnson, for all your information and your answering of all our questions. And thank you all again for all the great work you do for the city of Milford.
Good evening. Thank you.
The next and last department for us tonight presented would be the department number 4310, the Milford Police Department. Page 43, Chief Mello and Chief Ron. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
You could have a brief presentation, and we could open it up to questions for you, and that'd be great.
Sure, I'll keep it brief. I know it's getting late, and we're the last department to testify here. Our budget, as you can see, has increased by approximately $1 million over last year. I'd also direct you to the the personnel services, and you'll notice that $1 million is reflected in large part, almost entirely in wages. And that's a result of the settlement with the 3 unions, the 3 police department unions, which reflect 2 to 3 years of wage increases. Other than that, as we go down through the personnel services, I do want to point out, though, there are some slight increases in the overtime accounts to reflect part of the wage increase, certainly not all of them. I anticipate that the regular overtime account will be in a $220,000 deficit. We know from projections from past history. The dedicated training overtime, anticipate a $58,000 deficit, and in the holiday pay further down the page, 4114, anticipate a $79,000 deficit. Those deficits are similar to deficits that we've had in the past. As we continue down the page, our fringe benefits and employee equipment are relatively the same as they have been in the past. The operational expenses are relatively the same. Some accounts had slight increases, many had decreases, and bringing us to the last account of capital outlays. And while there is an increase in the capital outlay account of approximately $100,000, that reflects the restoration of funding to the body-worn camera account. If you recall, that's a contract with the with Axon, and it is a product of the state grant, and we're responsible to pay the reoccurring costs after the state grant funded the first-year purchase and first-year storage costs. That's a restoration of the funding that was cut last year. There's also a restoration of the vehicle cruiser account that was cut last year, and those cuts were made, as I recall, in anticipation of potential reduction in state funding. There's also a speed traffic device being purchased and a slight increase in the computer account. There's no new projects here. We did request funding for dispatchers. As you recall, a number of years ago, we combined the police, fire, EMS dispatch into one center. The police department is still trying to regain the positions that were lost due to some layoffs approximately 12 years ago, or 10 years ago, excuse me. We are in need of 8 dispatchers to run a fully functional civilian dispatch program. We only have 4. Fire has, on their side, they have the full 8. And so there was a request for 3, and we had some discussions as to that position, and I'll leave that for the mayor. But other than that, there was no additional funding here for new programs other than the restoration of funding that I just mentioned. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions.
I see we have an additional school resource officer that's new on our line item. So now we'll be able to have one at each high school and one at each middle school, correct, Chief?
That's correct. There's been requests for probably the last 4 years from the Board of Education to increase the school resource officer program to include one in each middle school. I've had discussions with the mayor, and I'll leave that for him to comment on regarding increasing the school resource officer program by 1 police officer and taking that police officer from the existing group of officers, the existing 116, and in turn hiring a dispatcher. Currently, because we don't have enough dispatchers, we have police officers working in a dispatch center. Now we're paying police officers salary, we're going through all the mandated required training and equipping that person to work in a dispatch center. Hiring a dispatcher certainly is not only in salary and benefits, but in terms of training and equipment, it's far less expensive. So the idea was to put a dispatcher in the dispatch center, remove that police officer who works in that center, and place them into an SRO capacity. Knowing that the Board of Education, provided that they've reached an agreement on this, and I believe they have, the Board of Education will fund 50% of that police officer's salary. I think it's also just important to know, I just want to be completely clear on that. It isn't a direct, a police officer comes out of the dispatch center and goes to the school. It's not that seamless, because the way the dispatch contract works is there are openings from time to time. Their shifts don't coordinate with our shifts, and so it won't be we're taking a day officer out of the dispatch center and moving them. There will be some reduction in shifts, because there are times where we'll have excess police officers, and there'll be times where we won't need a police officer in that dispatch center. And the hours aren't necessarily certainly won't coincide with the SRO, but I still think it's a good exchange to not only increase our dispatcher personnel, but also to satisfy our commitment to the SRO program.
In the future, Chief, you are looking at having that dispatchers be civilian, trained civilians, rather than take a police officer that's highly trained and experienced to sit him down in the dispatch room where he could be well received out in the field. Is that in the future?
Yes, that's certainly the intent. In fact, that was the intent since we started this idea of consolidation. Actually, prior to consolidation, the intent many, many years ago when we had police officers working dispatch, and this is going back probably 30 years, we started putting civilians in there. We had slowly hired dispatcher to dispatcher. We unfortunately took a step backwards when we laid people off. Police officers make fine dispatchers, but that's an expensive, it's an expensive proposition to be training police officers to work in a dispatch center when we can do so for far less. But the other issue, and I want to make sure that I'm clear on this as well, when we combined our dispatch centers, we won't use police officers to dispatch for fire, and we can't use firefighters to dispatch for fire either. So the problem that we have right now is we only have X amount of dispatchers that are capable of doing both sides. And we've had some considerable issues where we're short personnel. We have to order people to stay in, or to stay over instead of going home. We have got to get to civilian dispatchers. It makes sense in terms of cost, but operationally, it's our best option.
Something surely I'm looking forward to. I just can't see the extreme great training that a police officer has to go through. And I know they make great dispatchers. Don't take the wrong way, because they know how to dispatch because they're on the job. But if a civilian is trained properly, it certainly is going to be a much better use of our resources. Putting him in a police uniform and put him out where he's more needed.
Absolutely. That's a dispatcher's focus. That's what they were hired for. That's what they sign on for. Police officers don't sign on to work in a dispatch center.
Right.
Some of them aren't very good at it, and so we don't put them in there. But I think this is a step in the right direction. While it's only one, again, it's a step in the right direction.
Is there any questions regarding Alderman Vecchiarelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening.
I just have a couple of questions here. The new SRO officer, so basically, we had a policeman that was working in the dispatch, and we've taken him out of there and put him in the rotation for regular for a police officer now, right? Took him out of there and put him in the lineup for the police?
No, we haven't, because we don't have a civilian dispatcher to replace him or her.
So we haven't done that?
No, we haven't, and so it'll be a one-for-one. If it's approved and we add an additional SRO in September, or actually in August, when that SRO goes over to the school, then we'll be reduced by one police officer, one active police officer, a police officer that works a rotating shift.
Okay.
So we'll take one from the field, one position, not necessarily a direct one-for-one, but that position, and that dispatcher will be hired and go into the dispatch center. So we won't have to, whatever shift needs a police officer, we won't have to fill that particular shift. Does that make sense? I know it's just not a one-for-one is what I'm trying to say. So it's not like there will be some shifts where you will be short a police officer that would normally be in the field, because we don't need a police officer that day to work in the dispatch center, because the shifts don't necessarily coincide. They're different schedules.
Now, when I look at the budget here, the SROs are shown as, they have a line item cost, and they're split with the Board of Ed. So would it be prudent to have their costs shown only in half, and then in the Board of Ed to show the other half? Because if we show their full cost, like in this book, does it not show up in the Board of Ed?
That's an accounting issue. I'm going to actually, if you don't mind, if Our finance director could answer that question.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Vecchiarelli. I believe we've had this discussion before in prior meetings, and as I've explained before, the budgeted item is in the Board of Ed. It's also in the police department. But from an accounting standpoint, we are charging the Board of Ed for their half and crediting the police for that half. And the surplus half, if you will, goes back to the general fund balance. So I just feel, from my own personal standpoint, reluctant to make it half or half, just to make sure that the item is 100% in the police department's budget as a precaution. In the event, God forbid, we don't get the credit, but I know we get it year after year. So I hope that makes sense. I'll be happy to elaborate further if necessary.
Well, when I look at the cost for the Board of Education, and we're talking expenses for an SRO, each one approximately $100,000. So if that's 5 times $100,000, that's half of that expense should be on the Board of Ed. So if I want to know how much the Board of Education cost, I'd like to see that $250,000 in their budget, and to see the police departments, their contribution, in their budget. So, I think I understand for your perspective, but I'm not at your level. I only get to look at this book and dissect what's in there. And when I look at this and I see, the 70,000 plus benefits on the police department, currently right now, the police department is, let's say they're $1 million more than the fire department. And, maybe they shouldn't have that like that, because half of the expense for those 5 SROs should be on the Board of Education, and that's the way we always planned it. So why, again, do we show it like this? What is your reason for that?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Alderman Vecchiarelli, yes, you are correct, and I want to emphasize that the half the cost, which I believe is $40,000 per SRO, is indeed in the Board of Ed budget. They have budgeted.
That's not with benefits. They're around $100,000 per SRO with benefits, right? That's their total cost.
I won't argue with that, but I will say that the agreement has been $40,000 per SRO. So it was 4 times 40 is $160,000. That was in the Board of Ed budget, and now if we have 5, it would be, I believe, $200,000, which is in the Board of Ed's budget as an expenditure to be paid to the city to reimburse, if you will, the police department or credit the city $40,000 per SRO. So it is in their budget, and it credits the city, and that surplus goes back to the city's general fund at the end of the year, June 30th.
So when we decide what the Board of Education's budget will ultimately be, then they're going to give us money back?
Yes, I send the Board of Education a bill from my office each year for the $40,000 per officer. I send that to Jim Riccitelli's office, and his accounts payable department cuts a check to the city for $40,000 per SRO, which I deposit to the city's general fund to reimburse the city for their half, if you will, the $40,000 per officer.
Who pays for the benefits?
I would imagine the city pays for the benefits, yes. But if you talk to the Board of Ed, I don't want to speak for Mr. Riccitelli. Perhaps I would imagine they think that that $40,000 includes mostly salary, but perhaps a portion for benefits, but I'll let him speak to that.
Okay, thank you. I have one more follow-up. Chief, I know that we have the body cameras, and we're now paying for the full recording and everything. So I would imagine that's going well.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I just remind you that we've had body cameras before the state. We've had them for 7 years now. The state is only, body cameras, you've only really started hearing about them for the last 3 years. And so we had them before the grant program.
I was looking in the budget, and I would imagine somewhere in a line item here was the cameras that used to be or are still in the cars. So I think I heard that the police department's no longer using vehicle cameras, that you're just using the body camera. Is that true?
That's true. It's just a matter of cost. We want to do both. We actually had a contract with Taser, who is now Axon, to do the in-car cameras. The equipment was shipped to the PD, but it was in its infancy, and we weren't happy with the product. The departments in the area have used it, and they haven't been happy, so we're shipping it back. But our plan is to put cars in the cameras. These cameras don't replace the in-car. There's no metadata about the driving, about the activation of lights or anything else. And they only show limited, they're chest level, and you're probably going to see a dashboard. You're not going to see what happens in front or just slightly on the peripheral. So I think we need both, but it's a matter of cost. We had stopped funding that program, and the cameras needed to be replaced. We didn't fund the maintenance on those, so we couldn't fix them, and we didn't fund the purchase. So those are gone. Those are about $6,000 a piece, $6,000 to $7,000 a piece. Actually, some of them are upwards of $9,000. We have 35 cruisers. That's a big number. We went with Taser.
One time we had cameras in all of the cruisers, right?
Every car.
And couldn't we have just continued with that? And because I thought the body cameras, were in addition to, because I think you said, there really isn't a replacement for a vehicle camera. It pulls up, it's recording, you're getting a bird's eye view, you don't turn it on and off, it's like, it's there. And are you going to be putting them back in the cars?
Yes, we are. We're trying. We just had that contract. We were actually going to use, we were looking for alternative funding. I think we were going to use C's asset money to do that. We just weren't happy with the product. We liked the cost of the product. We just didn't like the performance of the product. But they're completely, they're almost apples and oranges, because the body cameras are going to record everything when an officer is in a home or at an event. The in-car is only going to show what's in front of the car, and it has audio as well. But they both have a valuable purpose. The intent is to get there. It's just we're looking for a platform that we can afford.
Well, thank you. I'm happy you're looking forward to putting them back in, because with the two of them, we probably stand to protect, your guys even more.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Alderman Vitale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the Chief. Good evening, Chiefs. How are you doing? Just when I initially read the idea that one of the dispatchers was going to be converted to an SRO, the immediate question was, oh, wow, it really doesn't have any impact, because that's what he does full-time, is in the dispatch center. But that's not true, as I figure out and hear you talk, that when you take this individual and put him in an SRO position, you're going to impact your labor force, are you not?
In theory, it's true, but I don't think it's completely accurate, because if we were going to take it, if we knew that we had a police officer that was Monday through Friday in the dispatch center, then it would be a one-for-one. We would take that officer out and put that officer as an SRO or someone else. But the positions would be a direct connection. That's not necessarily the case. I can't tell you what shift that officer is going to be working or what shift that officer is going to be removed from, because it depends on what shifts are filled by the dispatchers who bid on their shifts every couple months. So there will be some days where there'll be a direct connection where the officer that would normally be in the dispatch center will be replaced by a civilian dispatcher. but there'll be other days where that won't happen. But in theory, it is a 1-for-1.
So can I interpret that as being a reduction in force?
At certain times.
Okay.
And you can also interpret to be an increase at other times.
Okay, so it's very difficult to get a handle on it,
right.
get it wrapped around. You indicated, some of this, and you just talked about seized assets.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me what the total amount of seized assets amount?
I don't know. I will tell you there's two different seized assets. There's federal seized assets and there's state seized assets. Most of the state seized assets have dried up. There's some strict federal requirements, both on the state requirements as well, on what that money can be used for. And we have a strict accounting with the federal government as to how we spend that money. They change that from time to time. It's changed over the last 3 years. I think it's changed possibly 2 or 3 times.
So you don't really have control over where the expenditures might lie?
Oh, yes, I do. I have control over what we're going to spend, but it has to meet a certain criteria.
In other words, would you be able to spend and help offset some of the cameras?
Yes, and that's what we're going to use the money for.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I just want to, it cannot be used, as my understanding, for the body cameras, but it can be used to purchase in-car cameras. Because we made an agreement that the local funds had a supplement that it couldn't supplant. And so when we entered into that agreement with the state for the grant, we were agreeing that we would use local budgeted funding source, our local source. But that's a separate program. But to purchase in-car, that's exactly what we would use that money for. But there's not enough for that there's not enough in there to do that.
Do you have any idea what these seized assets would be that you can work with?
Where do they come from?
The amount.
I don't know. I'm guessing, is it about 200,000, 150,000? Do you know what the federal seized asset account is? I shouldn't be speculating.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the chief and to Alderman Vitale, the balance in that account is about 235,000 in the seized asset account.
So that's the monies you can use with criteria, with certain caps or criteria.
Right. Also understand that we do a lot with that money, and once that money's gone, then it's gone. And if we went through an inventory of the programs and the equipment we bought at the police department, you would probably be very surprised at how little was bought with budgeted funds, how little was part of the budget. For instance, the motorcycles, the 3 motorcycles, those are all purchased by seized asset funds. Simon Lake, when we developed the equipment on at Simon Lake, that was purchased with seized asset funds. When we bought Telestaff, our Telestaff scheduling system, there was $78,000, that was seized asset funds. When we needed to purchase new handguns for everyone in the tune of, I don't know the exact dollar amount because there were some trade-ins involved, but I believe it was approximately $100,000. That was seized asset funds. That's what we use that account for.
Thank you.
Alderman Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Chief Mello and Chief Ron. So my line of questioning is similar to what's been mentioned by others. I know that the department has received equipment in the past through Region 2, either directly or on a shared basis through the region. And I wondered if we are still in a position where we've taken equipment in that manner, or has it dried up? That's number one. Number two, there was a recent federal appropriations bill that included COPS funding. And a number of municipalities and states benefited through COPS funding back in '96, I believe it was. And I wondered if you've heard anything how Milford could benefit through that particular funding stream. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question. I've actually answered that before some years ago. I'm going to answer it the same way. We're not going to get that funding because of our ability to pay. There is funding available. In fact, I had a meeting with the Chiefs Association and Senator Blumenthal, and I asked the same thing. They said, look, there's going to be more money after this tragic situation in Parkland for SROs. And I said, well, last time around, we didn't get any money. I had mentioned that, and I said, what's the formula going to be? And his aide got back to me and said, you didn't get any money last time because of your strong financial health. And they go to communities who lack the ability to pay for it. And I had anticipated that that was going to be the response before. That was a response. And clearly that'll be the same response again. It goes to those with the greatest financial need. So that will not be made available to us. But I have had correspondence with Senator Blumenthal's office just to verify that that's the case. I guess you don't, if you have good fiscal management, I'm not going to say you get punished, but you don't get a chance to benefit from that funding. The other question in Region 2, that money has slowed. Most of that money goes to regional assets. We are the custodial owner of a large regional asset for Region 2 in the form of a shoot house. There's been some work for some radio systems, some special event type radio systems, critical incident type radio systems, mainly to maintain what we already have and some enhancements. But the PD is getting nothing direct. I haven't seen anything go to the PD directly. Most of it's EOC type stuff. Fire benefits from it probably more. There's probably a greater need for them than there is for PD.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Alderman Gurman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the chiefs. How are you doing?
Fine, yourself?
Good.
Good.
Big picture question. I'm just trying to compare Milford with other towns of similar size. On our budget, it's one of our largest percentage of our budgets, along with public works and fire, and education, but also the number of police officers, lieutenants, sergeants. How do we compare with other towns of similar size?
In terms of our command structure, we're right where we should be. There are towns that maybe have additional layers or more numbers at certain layers. We're right where we should be. I'm very comfortable with the structure. But in terms of our budget, I do that. I compare our budget I try to compare apples to apples and oranges to oranges. I would invite you to look at our budget versus the Hamden budget, the Manchester budget, the Fairfield budget. And you can even go back when I first made chief. I'm looking at our budget compared to Hamden. They had $1 million. Their budget was $1 million greater. I think it's $3.5 million greater now, possibly $4 million. If you compare ours to Fairfield, we're not talking 100,000. We're talking in millions and multi-millions. And if you look at where our budget has gone compared to where these other municipalities are going, you would probably be very surprised on how we continue to fund our operation. We're proud of that. I have some concerns when it comes to overtime. I have concerns about training. We've been fortunate through utilizing surplus from openings, employment, or positions that haven't been filled to fill some of those deficits. I'd invite you to look at those overtime accounts and compare it to our overtime accounts. And then to make sure you're comparing apples to apples, look at the calls for services. Look at the amount of arrests. Look at the reports. And you'll see vast similarities in all those agencies. Now, some of those, the salary survey just came in today. It was just completed, and actually I had the Board of Police Commissioners meeting before I came here, and I handed that salary survey out to demonstrate the significant differences in pay. So I think that when you look at the budget, a lot of it is wages, and so it's difficult to see what is wages and what is operational expenses and capital outlays. I'll give you, for instance, you look at some police departments, everyone in the police department gets a phone. We don't do that. We ask people to use their own phone. So that becomes difficult. But if you're just looking at numbers, personnel costs, most of those departments are going to be far greater. operational costs, they're going to be far greater. I looked at cars before I came here today in anticipation of a possible question. And when I became police chief, we would purchase 12 cars for 7 less police officers. Now we're purchasing half of that. The money that I get that is recommended for cars in today's dollar, it's not 190,000, it's 304,000. That's what that number would be. If I look at what I inherited in 2004, in today's dollar, that number is 304,000. Well, we're not spending $304,000 for cars, we're spending $190,000 for cars. But having said all that, I mean, I'm biased because I've dedicated my life to this department as the deputy chief. We're the best local police department in the state of Connecticut. We have the best training. We have the best training facility, training academy. I have departments, and we talked about this at the commission meeting, who say they'll pay us to run a training academy for 30 people. Well, we don't do that unless it's advantageous for us, so we have to have a certain number. We are leaders in every aspect, and we are on the forefront. We talked about cameras. We've had cameras for 7 years. We started doing things that we didn't invent the wheel, because other communities out west maybe were doing it, and we just kind of mirrored it off of them. But we were doing things before other agencies were doing them, especially on the command side and on the administrative side, and how we managed our people and looked at threshold behaviors to identify potential training issues or where we needed corrective action. Our equipment is outstanding. There's an opportunity to say something there about the building, but I won't do that, but I'll leave that for another time. But our equipment is outstanding. Our people are outstanding. Our support is strong. I don't know, I think we have a great police department. I do get concerned when I see our replacement cycles get pushed out, and what that means for infrastructure if we keep doing that. Clearly things go up, and if you subtract the $1 million for wage increases, the only way that, how are we paying for those things? At some point, you have to look at your infrastructure. I have 40 laptop computers and 85 desktops and 22 servers. Well, you keep pushing those out, or you keep pushing your UPS maintenance out, you don't pay the insurance for maintenance, then you're going to have a problem. And we're getting kind of close there. So I guess the short answer is we do it for a lot less, and I'm proud of the way we were able to do that. But I think we have to recognize the limits. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much.
I must say, Chief, I've gone to all the commissioners' meetings, and I've gone to the state commissioners' meetings, and everyone talks about Milford Police Department. He said, "You come from Milford?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "They got one of the best police departments in the state," and you just confirm yourself, and it's very proud to be standing there, listening to people talk about how proud they are of our police department, and I've heard all the letters that you receive from all the residents, the great work that our police officers are doing in every level.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you got to be very, very highly commended about you and your deputy chief and the staff that you have. I'm very proud to be a resident of Milford.
Oh, great, thank you, appreciate that.
Alderman Vaccarelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would almost like to echo the same sentiments. I see the diversity in your department.
Proud of that.
I see the high degree of professionalism by your men and women, and I want you to know that it doesn't go unnoticed.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm very proud to have you representing and directing our department, and it's nice to know that we have your police officers here protecting our citizens and giving us you know, what we have from your department. We live here in a relatively safe environment, and, you know, your policemen do a very good job, so I'd like to thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Anyone have any more questions for the chiefs? Seeing none, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you. Have a good night,
Chief
everyone.
Ron, Chief Mello, thank you for coming and answering all our questions. Have a good night.
Take that, or you want to keep
We have a motion and a second to recess. So the next budget meeting will be Monday, April 23rd. Thank you.